Alhamdulillah, in the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. May peace and blessings be upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Have you ever found yourself awake in the quiet hours, heart restless, mind circling back to someone again and again? You wonder why they linger in your thoughts, why no matter how hard you try, the memory of them refuses to fade. It's in these moments when the world is still that your soul whispers truths it cannot yet fully express. Perhaps Allah is asking you to look closer, not at them, but at yourself, at the spaces in your heart that ache for connection, for understanding, for love. Remember, Allah says, and we will surely test you with something of fear and hunger and a loss of wealth and lives and fruits, but give good tidings to the patient. What you feel now is not meaningless. This longing, this persistent thought is a test of your saber, a gentle pull guiding you to reflect, to surrender, to grow. It is a reminder that hearts are entrusted to Allah, and He knows what we are ready for, even when we do not. There is a profound beauty in pain and waiting. Every moment your heart dwells on someone, there is an invitation to turn inward, to examine the emotions, desires, and memories that surface. The heart aches not merely for a person, but for the completeness it seeks, a completeness that only Allah can fill. It is in these tender moments of solitude and reflection that the soul begins to understand its own depth, its own longing for divine proximity. The heartbreak, the unanswered questions, the silence from them, all of it is a pathway if you allow it to be. A way to learn trust, patience, and reliance upon Allah's perfect timing. This is what sabr truly means. Not simply enduring, but embracing the lessons embedded in longing. It is letting go of what you cannot control and turning instead to the one who controls all. The Prophet taught us how wonderful is the affair of the believer, for his affairs are all good. Every thought of someone, every flutter of the heart can become a vessel of reflection, a reminder to pray, to remember, to surrender. When you feel your heart pulled in one direction, let it also be pulled toward Allah. Offer Him your attachment, your yearning, your silent questions. Watch how your heart softens, how clarity emerges, how peace begins to settle where unrest once lived. Trust in Allah's plan, for some souls cross our path to teach, some to test, and some to love us in ways that refine our faith. Let your thoughts not be a chain that binds you to longing, but a bridge that brings you closer to understanding, to self-compassion, to Him. Every memory, every reflection, every silent wish is not in vain. Allah knows, Allah sees, Allah is closer than your jugular vein. And when you place your heart in His care, you will find that even thoughts of others begin to soothe rather than torment, and your soul finally learns to rest. Our hearts are mirrors of what we love, and when someone occupies our thoughts constantly, it reflects the depth of our attachment more than we might realize. The human heart is created to hold love, to feel deeply, and to cling to what it perceives as meaningful or necessary for its emotional existence. When your mind repeatedly turns to a person, it is not merely habit or randomness, it is the heart signaling that this connection, real or imagined, holds significance. Allah has created us with the capacity to love profoundly, but He also tests us through the intensity of our attachments. Sometimes this persistent thought is a mirror of our own unmet needs, our desire for validation, or a reflection of the void we hope another will fill. Yet beneath these surface desires, there is a deeper spiritual lesson. The heart longs because it seeks completeness. And ultimate completeness comes from Allah alone. Constant thinking about someone is also a test of awareness, patience, and understanding. It calls us to observe our emotions without being enslaved by them, to notice the patterns of the mind and the pull of the heart. The more we reflect, the more we can discern between what nourishes the soul and what merely distracts it from its ultimate purpose. These thoughts can reveal our attachments, not to the person themselves, but to what they represent in our lives. Love, comfort, familiarity, or a sense of belonging. Recognizing this allows the believer to redirect their focus, to understand the weight of their emotions, and to begin cultivating a heart that is anchored in divine love rather than purely human longing, shaping the way we relate to others and, more importantly, to Allah. Constantly thinking about someone often signals an unmet emotional need or an unresolved feeling within the heart. Our hearts are not designed to be empty vessels. They crave connection, understanding, and a sense of belonging. When a person repeatedly occupies our thoughts, it is usually because our soul is searching for something it cannot yet fully articulate or achieve. This longing may arise from a desire for love, acceptance, reassurance, or closure. Needs that have not been fulfilled or acknowledged. Often the mind fixates on a person not merely for who they are, but for what they symbolize in our emotional world: security, comfort, or validation. In Islamic understanding, this restless attachment is a subtle reminder that the heart seeks its ultimate satisfaction not in people, but in Allah. Our unmet needs become a reflection of deeper spiritual yearnings, and when these needs remain unresolved, the soul is prompted to turn inward, to examine its desires, and to seek healing through remembrance and reliance upon Allah. This process is not meant to create guilt or frustration, but to awaken awareness. The Prophet taught us that the heart is delicate and easily swayed, yet it can be trained to find contentment through dhikr, reflection, and trust in Allah's wisdom. When we recognize that persistent thoughts may stem from unresolved emotional gaps, we are given an opportunity to nurture ourselves with patience, understanding, and self-compassion. The pain of longing becomes a spiritual lesson in disguise, inviting us to surrender our unmet desires to Allah, to ask Him for guidance, and to cultivate inner resilience. By acknowledging these hidden needs, we can transform our thoughts from a source of restless fixation into a path toward emotional maturity and deeper connection with our Creator, understanding that fulfillment ultimately rests in His perfect wisdom. Allah places people in our lives with wisdom that often exceeds our understanding, and not every presence is meant to remain forever. Sometimes someone enters our world to teach us patience, to awaken reflection, or to guide us towards self-discovery. Other times, their presence is a test, a means to refine our character, strengthen our faith, or redirect our hearts toward what is truly beneficial. We may find ourselves clinging to memories, conversations, or fleeting moments, wondering why this person continues to occupy our thoughts. Yet, in the grand tapestry of divine decree, nothing is wasted and every encounter carries purpose. The heart's attachment, even when unreciprocated or transient, can serve as a spiritual mirror, revealing both our capacity to love and our areas of vulnerability. Recognizing this truth requires surrender, and understanding that human desires are limited while Allah's wisdom is infinite. When we accept that people are placed in our lives according to divine timing and divine wisdom, our longing begins to shift from frustration to contemplation. We begin to see that some relationships are meant to guide, not to satisfy, to teach, not to complete, and to pass through, not to permanently dwell within our hearts. This realization does not diminish the intensity of our feelings, but it transforms them, offering a sense of purpose even in moments of pain or uncertainty. The soul learns to differentiate between what is fleeting and what is eternal, between human love and the ultimate love of Allah. By embracing this perspective, we allow ourselves to grow spiritually, to release what is beyond our control, and to trust that every person who crosses our path, whether they stay or leave, has been placed there by Allah for a reason, perfectly timed to shape us in ways we may not yet fully comprehend. Human longing is a reflection of the soul's deeper yearning for connection, and it often reaches far beyond the surface of our immediate desires. When we find ourselves thinking constantly about someone, it is not only the mind or the heart that is restless, but the soul itself searching for a sense of completeness that this world cannot fully provide. Our hearts are made to love, to attach, to feel, yet there is a sacred emptiness that only Allah can fill. Every persistent thought, Every memory that lingers is a subtle reminder that our deepest fulfillment lies not in another person, but in the one who knows our hearts entirely. This longing is a divine nudge, guiding us inward toward reflection and outward toward understanding the nature of our attachments. It asks us to question why we seek solace in human connection, and whether that search can be transformed into a yearning for Allah's proximity. In this way, the human struggle becomes an opportunity for spiritual awakening. The Prophet taught us that the heart can be restless when it seeks what is temporary instead of eternal. Our attachment to people can mirror our attachment to worldly comforts, and through patience, self-awareness, and remembrance, we can begin to untangle the threads of longing that pull us away from the divine. The intensity of our thoughts about someone often signals the intensity of our need for love, acceptance, and peace, needs that are ultimately fulfilled in Allah alone. Recognizing this truth allows the believer to navigate the heart's yearnings with grace, transforming emotional turbulence into spiritual insight, and human longing into a bridge that draws the soul closer to the source of all love, wisdom, and serenity. The mind often clings to what it cannot have, and yet Allah's divine decree shapes everything for our ultimate good, even when we fail to see it. When someone occupies our thoughts persistently, it can feel like an endless loop of longing, regret, or unfulfilled desire. We wonder why this connection remains unresolved, why our hearts ache for someone who may be distant, unavailable, or incompatible with our path. Yet, in the unseen wisdom of Allah, every attachment, every emotion, every encounter has meaning beyond what we perceive. Human hearts are naturally drawn to what they desire, but our desires are not always aligned with what is best for us. Allah reminds us in the Quran, but perhaps you hate a thing and it is good for you, and perhaps you love a thing and it is bad for you. And Allah knows while you know not. The persistent thoughts of someone can be a mirror, reflecting both our longing and the boundaries of what is truly beneficial for us. Clinging to what is unattainable teaches the soul surrender, patience, and trust. It is a call to release control, to trust that Allah's timing is perfect and that His plan encompasses our emotional needs in ways we cannot foresee. The heart learns that longing is not punishment, but an invitation to refine itself, to redirect its attention toward Allah, and to seek fulfillment in what is eternal rather than transient. Even in moments of uncertainty or unrequited affection, divine wisdom is at work, gently shaping the believer's path, protecting the soul from what could harm, and preparing it for what will bring genuine contentment. When we embrace this truth, the mind's fixation on someone transforms from a source of restlessness into a catalyst for trust, surrender, and spiritual growth, reminding us that Allah's decree is always perfect and His wisdom encompasses every longing of the heart. Emotional attachment is one of the most delicate and profound aspects of the human experience, and it often serves as a test of patience and self-restraint. When we find ourselves thinking constantly about someone, it is a reflection of the heart's natural tendency to cling, to hold on tightly to what brings comfort, familiarity, or a sense of belonging. Yet, this very attachment can become a mirror for our inner growth, revealing areas where the soul is learning to trust, to release, and to practice restraint. In Islam, sabr, patience, is not merely about waiting passively. It is an active cultivation of inner strength, a conscious effort to align the desires of the heart with the wisdom and timing of Allah. The more intense our emotional attachment, the greater the opportunity for the soul to learn patience, to discern between fleeting desires and lasting benefit, and to cultivate reliance upon Allah rather than human presence alone. The Prophet taught us that the heart is tested in both abundance and longing, and that every trial is a doorway to purification. Attachment then is not inherently wrong, but it becomes a lesson when it is paired with awareness, reflection, and surrender. When we feel our hearts pulled towards someone repeatedly, it is a call to observe our emotions without being consumed by them, to recognize that longing can coexist with trust in Allah, and that true freedom lies in allowing the heart to love and care without clinging. The process of self-restraint refines the believer's character, strengthens the connection to Allah, and nurtures emotional resilience. It teaches that the deepest satisfaction is not found in possession or constant closeness, but in the ability to maintain composure, to honor our feelings, and to place hope and reliance ultimately in the one who orchestrates every relationship, every encounter, and every attachment in perfect wisdom. Love and remembrance of others are natural expressions of the human heart, yet they should never replace the remembrance of Allah, for He is the ultimate source of comfort, guidance, and fulfillment. When someone occupies our thoughts repeatedly, it is easy to become so absorbed in their presence, their actions, or their absence, that our hearts drift away from the one who truly sustains them. Islam teaches that the heart's true nourishment comes from closeness to Allah, through dhikr, prayer, and trust in His wisdom. The Prophet reminded us that hearts are restless until they find rest in Allah, and this rest cannot be fully attained through human attachment alone. While caring for, loving, or remembering someone is part of the human experience, the believer must ensure that these attachments do not become a substitute for divine connection. When the mind constantly dwells on another, it is an invitation to redirect that energy toward Allah, to transform longing into worship, and to seek contentment in the presence of the one who knows our hearts better than we do. The persistent thoughts we have about others can serve as gentle reminders that love, in its purest form, should elevate the soul rather than entangle it. When remembrance of Allah becomes the anchor of the heart, human connections are placed in their proper perspective. They become blessings, lessons, or reflections of divine wisdom rather than the ultimate source of peace or identity. By prioritizing Allah in our hearts, we create space for healing, for clarity, and for understanding, allowing our emotions to align with what is eternal rather than temporary. In this alignment, attachment is no longer a burden, but a reflection of the heart's capacity to love while remaining grounded in divine presence, recognizing that ultimate satisfaction and security are found only in the one who never leaves, never falters, and whose mercy encompasses every longing and every thought. Reflecting on why we think of someone so frequently can uncover profound opportunities for personal growth and self-awareness. Our hearts and minds are rarely silent for no reason. When a person occupies our thoughts repeatedly, it is often because our soul is attempting to communicate a deeper need or unresolved emotion. This reflection is not meant to induce guilt or self-reproach, but rather to illuminate the areas within ourselves that require understanding, patience, and spiritual attention. Islam encourages believers to engage in self-reflection, to examine the state of their hearts, and to recognize the lessons embedded in every emotional experience. By asking ourselves why we are so fixated on someone, we begin to uncover patterns of attachment, expectation, and desire that may be influencing our peace of mind. Perhaps it is a longing for validation, a need for love, or an unhealed wound from the past. Each of these realizations is a doorway to growth. The Prophet taught that hearts are delicate and that self-awareness allows us to purify them, aligning our attachments with what is beneficial and releasing what may lead to harm or restlessness. When we take the time to reflect, we begin to see our thoughts not as mere distractions, but as mirrors, showing us where we have room to cultivate patience, trust, and reliance upon Allah. This reflection allows us to transform emotional intensity into spiritual insight, recognizing that the presence of someone in our mind is less about the person themselves and more about the lessons and growth Allah is guiding us toward. Through conscious reflection, our thoughts become tools for self-improvement, teaching us to navigate the complexities of human emotion while grounding our hearts in divine wisdom, trust, and surrender, ultimately preparing us for deeper contentment and a more resilient faith. Forgiveness, letting go, and acceptance are essential steps in healing both the heart and the mind when someone occupies our thoughts constantly. Often, the mind lingers on a person because of past hurts, misunderstandings, or unmet expectations, replaying moments that cannot be changed. Holding on to these feelings can create a cycle of pain, preventing the heart from experiencing peace and the soul from finding clarity. Islam teaches that the act of letting go is not a weakness but a sign of inner strength and trust in Allah's wisdom. The Prophet reminded us that forgiving others is a pathway to purification and mercy, for when we release resentment or attachment, we make space for divine guidance and tranquility. Acceptance does not mean we dismiss our emotions or pretend that hurt did not exist. Rather, it is an acknowledgement of reality, an understanding that some things are beyond our control, and a conscious decision to surrender the outcome to Allah. Forgiveness, both of others and of ourselves, allows the mind to stop circling over what has passed and the heart to stop clinging to what cannot remain. Letting go transforms longing from a source of suffering into a source of reflection and growth, teaching the believer to trust in divine timing and to see each encounter as a chapter rather than the whole story. The Quran reminds us that Allah is aware of every burden and every silent struggle of the heart, and He provides comfort to those who turn to Him with sincerity. By practicing forgiveness and acceptance, the heart learns to release its grip on transient attachments while the soul draws nearer to Allah, finding solace in His unchanging presence. This process heals emotional wounds, restores balance, and redirects energy toward the eternal rather than the fleeting, allowing the believer to move forward with wisdom, patience, and serenity. Tawakkul, or trust in Allah, is a transformative principle that can turn anxiety, restlessness, and overthinking about someone into serenity and surrender. When a person occupies our thoughts constantly, it is often because we feel a lack of control, a fear that our desires or expectations may not be fulfilled. The heart clings to what it loves, the mind replays scenarios, and the soul yearns for certainty. Yet Islam teaches that true security and peace do not come from human relationships or the outcomes we imagine. They come from placing our trust fully in Allah. The Prophet reminded us that reliance upon Allah is a source of strength and relief, and that those who truly trust Him will find their hearts unburdened by what is beyond their control. Tawakkul is not passive resignation. It is an active surrender of worry, a conscious decision to acknowledge that Allah knows what is best for us, even when our hearts and minds do not. When we practice tawakkul, every persistent thought about someone becomes an opportunity to strengthen our faith, to remember that our desires are guided by divine wisdom, and that the timing and outcome of every matter are in Allah's hands. The mind's fixation transforms into reflection, the heart's longing becomes prayer, and the soul begins to rest in the certainty of divine knowledge and decree. By trusting Allah, we shift from seeking reassurance from human sources to seeking comfort in His presence. We learn to release control, to stop questioning every thought and emotion, and to allow the natural flow of life to unfold under divine guidance. Tawakkul softens the heart, eases the mind, and illuminates the path toward emotional balance, reminding the believer that ultimate fulfillment is not found in another person, but in surrendering every longing, every worry, and every attachment to the one who is most wise, most merciful, and most knowing. Inner peace is found when we recognize that some people are meant for our journey, but not necessarily for our destination. Our hearts often become restless when we hold on too tightly to someone, hoping that they will provide what only Allah can truly give: fulfillment, guidance, and unwavering comfort. Islam teaches us that human relationships are blessings, lessons, and sometimes tests, but they are never the ultimate source of contentment. When we allow our hearts to rest in this understanding, we begin to see that attachment to someone does not have to be a source of suffering. Instead, it can be an opportunity for reflection, growth, and reliance upon Allah. The Prophet taught us that everything in a believer's life is purposeful, and even what seems like loss or separation carries wisdom if we look closely. Some people are placed in our lives to teach us patience, to awaken our awareness, or to help us recognize the value of surrendering to divine timing. When we accept that certain connections are temporary, the mind stops circling in endless longing and the heart begins to find balance. Inner peace emerges when we redirect our attachment from the impermanent to the eternal, when we seek love, guidance, and solace from Allah rather than expecting it fully from another person. This does not diminish the value of human bonds, it elevates them, placing them in proper perspective. We can love deeply, care sincerely, and still maintain our spiritual center, knowing that our ultimate journey is toward Allah alone. In doing so, the persistent thoughts about someone become gentle reminders of our heart's capacity for attachment, compassion, and reflection, while also teaching us to cultivate patience, trust, and contentment that are rooted in divine wisdom rather than fleeting human presence. Remembering Allah softens the heart and redirects longing towards spiritual fulfillment, providing a balm for the restlessness that comes from persistent thoughts of someone. When the mind clings to another person, it is often seeking comfort, validation, or a sense of completeness. These desires, though natural, can leave the heart unsettled when they are placed on what is temporary rather than eternal. Islam teaches that true tranquility comes from connecting with the one who knows every hidden longing and every silent thought. The Quran reminds us, verily, in the remembrance of Allah do hearts find rest. Turning our attention to Allah, engaging in dhikr, prayer, and reflection, allows the heart to release the grip of worldly attachments and find satisfaction in the divine presence. This remembrance does not erase human emotions, but it reshapes them, giving them purpose and context within Allah's plan. When thoughts of someone arise, they can serve as cues to pause, reflect, and offer that longing to Allah, seeking His guidance, mercy, and clarity. The act of remembrance transforms restless thoughts into spiritual connection, teaching the believer that the heart's deepest needs are met not through human fulfillment alone, but through closeness to Allah. Over time, this practice strengthens emotional resilience, cultivates patience, and fosters an inner peace that is not dependent on external circumstances or relationships. The soul begins to understand that while people may come and go, Allah's presence is constant, encompassing, and sufficient. Through consistent remembrance, the heart learns to find comfort in the eternal, to view attachment as a means of reflection rather than fixation, and to trust that divine wisdom governs every relationship, desire, and encounter. In this way, the restless mind and aching heart are gradually transformed into vessels of faith, gratitude, and serenity, anchored in the remembrance of Allah above all else. Every thought, even the persistent ones, is an opportunity to turn inward and toward Allah, revealing the depths of our hearts and the state of our souls. When someone occupies our mind repeatedly, it is often because the heart is seeking, questioning, or yearning for something beyond what is immediately visible. In these moments, Islam encourages reflection, reminding us that every emotion, every attachment, and every lingering thought can serve as a guide towards spiritual growth. The Prophet taught that hearts are delicate and their inclinations reveal truths that the mind alone may not perceive. Persistent thoughts about someone are not necessarily a weakness. They are signals, invitations to examine the nature of our attachments, to understand what the heart truly craves, and to redirect that craving toward what is eternal. These reflections allow the believer to identify areas of dependence on worldly connections and to cultivate reliance on Allah's wisdom and mercy instead. By consciously turning each thought into a moment of dhikr, prayer, or reflection, the soul begins to recognize the transient nature of human relationships and the permanence of the divine. What begins as longing can transform into gratitude, patience, and spiritual awareness as we learn to release the grip of what is fleeting and embrace what nourishes the soul. Each recurring thought becomes a doorway, a chance to practice self-restraint, to cultivate trust in Allah's timing, and to redirect energy from fixation toward meaningful remembrance and inner purification. In this process, the believer learns that the mind's restlessness is not a burden, but a messenger pointing toward areas of growth, emotional healing, and increased proximity to Allah. What was once a source of distraction gradually becomes a tool for spiritual refinement, teaching the heart that true contentment, guidance, and fulfillment are found not in another human being, but in surrendering every longing and every thought to Allah, the most wise, most merciful. True contentment is found when we place our love, trust, and hope in Allah above all else, recognizing that human attachments, while meaningful, are limited and transient. When someone occupies our thoughts constantly, it is often because the heart has invested in a connection that cannot fully satisfy the soul's deepest longings. Islam teaches that ultimate fulfillment comes from Allah alone, for He is the source of mercy, guidance, and unwavering support. When we shift our focus from seeking completeness in people to seeking it in Him, the heart experiences a profound sense of peace that no worldly attachment can replicate. The Prophet reminded us that reliance on Allah frees the believer from anxiety, disappointment, and the endless cycles of longing that accompany human dependence. By placing our hope and love in the divine, we begin to navigate our emotions with clarity and serenity, understanding that every person in our life is part of Allah's divine plan, whether they remain with us or depart. This perspective transforms the way we experience attachment. It becomes a source of reflection and growth, rather than a burden or source of suffering. When the heart is anchored in Allah, even the persistent thoughts of someone serve as reminders of His wisdom, His timing, and His perfect knowledge of what is best for us. Trusting Him allows us to release control, forgive, and accept, cultivating patience and emotional resilience along the way. True contentment is not passive resignation, but an active alignment of the heart, mind, and soul with divine guidance, where love for Allah eclipses every human longing. In this alignment, the believer discovers that peace is not found in possession, attention, or reciprocation, but in surrendering fully to Allah, placing trust in His plan, and knowing that His love and wisdom encompass every desire, every thought, and every attachment in ways beyond our comprehension. In the tapestry of our hearts, every lingering thought, every persistent longing, and every attachment carries meaning beyond what the eyes can see. Constantly thinking about someone is not a flaw or a weakness. It is a mirror reflecting our deepest needs, our unspoken desires, and the state of our souls. Islam teaches us that these moments are not wasted. They are invitations to grow, to reflect, and to turn our hearts toward Allah, the source of true peace, fulfillment, and guidance. When we surrender our attachments, practice patience, embrace forgiveness, and anchor our hope and love in the divine, our restlessness transforms into serenity, our longing becomes a pathway to spiritual awareness, and our hearts find a peace that no human presence alone could provide. Remember, no matter how heavy the heart feels, Allah's wisdom encompasses every relationship, every emotion, and every thought. He places people in our lives to teach, to refine, and sometimes to guide us gently back to Him. True contentment is not in possession or closeness, but in surrender, trust, and remembrance. Let every lingering thought be a reminder that your soul's ultimate home is with Allah, and in His embrace, every longing is understood, every pain is healed, and every heart finds its true rest.